Hi there, welcome to the channel or welcome back. My name is Angela. I'm a home gardener growing here in my Zone 6 garden, southwestern Ohio in the US. And if you've been hanging around with me lately, you'll know that I'm making concerted efforts on the landscaping around here, just trying to make things look a little nicer. And while I don't do edible landscaping, as it's called, I do have a book on it that I got a while back, and I pulled it off my bookshelves recently just to kind of have something to read when I'm, have some free time. And there are some principles in here that I found are very helpful as I'm doing my landscaping work. Today I'm going to share those principles with you and show you how I'm incorporating those into my landscape. If you're ready, let's jump in. I thought the most helpful thing to show you first, before we start talking about these principles, I have 3 areas here that I've been working on. One is there, swinging around. I've got one in between these 2 trees right there. And then one that's closer into the house right here. All of these areas are predominantly shade. They do get some sun off and on throughout the day, but by and large I would call them shade gardens. So those are the 3 areas that I'm focused on right now and where I'm trying to incorporate these principles. I'm going to flip you back around. We're going to talk about the 4 principles, and then I'll give you specific examples of how these principles have been, I think, helping in my garden. Hang on. So I did not mention the name of this book. It's called The Beautiful Edible Garden. And I do hope to start doing some edible landscaping at some point in the future, but that's not right now. This book is by Leslie Bennett and Stephanie Bittner. And the subtitle is Design a Stylish Outdoor Space Using Vegetables, Fruits, and Herbs. Herbs, how do you guys say it? So these authors, their supposition is that there are 4 principles for successful edible garden design. The first one is balance, and they talk a lot about height and color, texture, shape, all those kind of characteristics, and having a nice balance throughout your garden. The second one is arrangement, symmetry and asymmetry, how both of those have their place in a garden. It just depends on what type of garden we're talking about, how those would play a part. Height, harvest frequency, underplanting. And the third principle is year-round beauty and harvest. So right now I'm not really concerned with that because I'm just doing landscaping and not edible landscaping per se. Perennial edibles, and just how to plant so that you're always harvesting something from your garden edible throughout the year, succession planting, kind of concepts that a lot of us vegetable gardeners are already familiar with, but not in terms of putting the edibles in the landscape. And the 4th principle is, and they mention intercropping. And the 4th principle is unified style. So out of these 4, I'm really focused on the first one and the 4th one. The first being thinking back balance, and the 4th one unified style. So I'm trying really hard to incorporate different varying heights of plants and shrubs, perennials, different textures, leaf color, and as far as unification, where I'm trying to make that fit in is primarily kind of taking some plants that have worked so far. At least this is still kind of a new endeavor for me, but plants that have been successful so far, and just repeating those plants throughout these 3 different areas, these shade garden areas. So I'm going to turn the camera around again and show you some specific examples. Let's do it. So we're going to get in kind of close here, and since these are shade gardens, I'm relying heavily on a lot of ferns. So down here I've got a couple of Japanese painted ferns, and this larger one, I believe that's a cinnamon fern. I went on a fern buying spree and just started planting, but I think that's a cinnamon fern. So I've got some Japanese painted ferns, cinnamon ferns, and then more recently I've planted some Ajuga, and I kind of dotted that throughout this little area here. Let me back up. Also in this area that was already here that I'm just leaving is this Rose of Sharon. This has been here since we moved in 13 years ago. It's kind of gotten overgrown at times. We've trimmed it back hard. It keeps coming back. I love it. I like the leaves, and it also has nice flowers. So given that, oh, and then also I have another down here at the end, another Japanese painted fern, and then another cinnamon fern, and then there's one more in the background there, kind of tucked in, yet that's a fourth Japanese painted fern. So kind of dotting those throughout, and that gives me the unity that one of those principles. And as far as balance, I'm kind of working on that. I know I need to work on different varying heights. That's kind of important in landscaping. And then moving over to this bed across the way, I did a little rock border there since the last time you guys saw it, but I have a couple of Japanese painted ferns in here, maybe just one actually. Bring you in closer there. And I tucked in some of this Ajuga, just a couple for now. That'll spread. I mean, it'll take a while, but it will spread. And then I have a couple of other types of ferns. This taller one is a lady fern, and that shorter one in the back right there is an ostrich fern, and that will get pretty tall. I'm not sure how long it'll take, but it'll get there. There are a number of other things planted in here, such as Jacob's ladder. I've got some Carex, sweet Woodruff. So it'll take a little while for all this to fill in. I also have some Celandine Poppy right there. And I believe that this is a black-eyed Susan. I'm not 100% until it blooms, but I didn't put it there. It just popped up there a couple of years ago. So I feel like I'm getting the unification part down really well. That's easy enough to do. So as far as balance in this bed, I feel pretty good as far as balancing out the textures and the varying shades of green, but I feel like the one thing I need to work on is varying heights. There is a large open spot right in the center of this bed, and what I think would go best there is a little bit of a taller shrub, not too tall, maybe 3 feet, 2 to 3 feet, and something that'll take on more of a mounded shape to kind of provide a little bit of a difference from these ferns, which are thin, upright. So that's there. And then moving on to this other bed, this is the one that really is in the roughest stage. I've just started on it. I have talked a number of times about the further end of the bed down there, which is primarily in the sun, how that's coming along. As you can see, I have my cardboard laid out everywhere. I use that as a weed barrier. And then I do have a stack of mulch that I'm going to get laid out onto that cardboard at some point. So over here, what I've got so far is several of these Ajuga. And I didn't mention these Ajuga, this is called, the line is Feathered Friends, and this particular variety is Petite Parakeet. I'll put names of these plants below in case you're interested. And I also have another Jacob's ladder there. So, and then this is a Bergenia here. As you can see, I have not laid the cardboard out here, but I will, just to kind of suppress the weeds and get some mulch laid down. And I have plans for, in between these two trees, putting something a little bit taller there, maybe kind of dotting 4 or 5 or 6 of those ostrich ferns there in that region, which will make a nice backdrop. And it'll kind of tie it all in together. So I feel like I've got the unification, the unity part down. it's just working on the balance, seeing what looks good together. And I recently heard one of my very favorite gardening personalities, Linda Vacher, say that if something works well, plant more of it. And that is definitely what my strategy will be going forward. And also kind of adjacent up against the decking there on the front of the house, I have got some rhizomes in going across that side there that are ostrich fern rhizomes. So you can get the rhizomes pretty cheap. I found a good source for those called TN Nursery. I'll link them below in case you're interested. I'm not affiliated. This arborvitae here, which is beautiful, recently got maybe its very first pruning ever. The whole understory, the branches were dead or dying, so I gave it a good trim. Let's get in a little bit closer. Really trying to get this area around the house cleaned up. We've never really given it too much TLC over the years, but you can see I've got a couple of piles of leaves there that I raked out, and I'm going to get those cleared out along. This is our dry creek bed here, but I've got those Carexes on both sides of this dry creek, so kind of just mirroring each other. It's not perfectly symmetrical, but I don't want it to be, because I want it to look a little bit more natural. But all along there, along that opening of the deck, I've got rhizomes planted for the ostrich ferns, and they ought to kind of cover up that opening really nicely. So I feel like it's getting there. It takes a while. It's okay. I do have updates on the veggie garden. I'll give you a quick peek on that. Not going to talk about that today. We're going to save that for next time. Just wanted to share with you how these landscaping efforts are coming along, and kind of some takeaways that I got from this book that have really been helpful. Sometimes I get all these gardening books or whatever, and I read them, enjoy them, but then do I really study them and put the principles into action? So I feel like I'm giving myself a pat on the back, because I'm actually learning from this book and putting those principles into action. I think the end result is going to be pretty good. And this whole stretch here in front of our front walkway, it does carry on down there. I'm kind of not necessarily doing exactly the same things over here, because this section does get a lot more sun. I am kind of this little end here that's shaded. I do have a couple of ferns there and one more of those Petite Parakeet Ajugas. So it still kind of will transition from this side that we looked at with all the Japanese painted ferns. There's a little walkway here out into the yard, and then over here it kind of slowly will transition over here. So lots to be done, but I'm pretty happy with how things are turning out so far. And then over here we've got a bunch of sun lovers, because there's the driveway there. So just to orient you, east is that way, south is there. So this area here, without anything blocking it, does get quite a bit of sun. And I found recently a good supply of rocks for a pretty good price. Let's walk back over here and I'll show you this little rock border. Now, we had a few of these on the property here and there, but by far probably 85% of these rocks I purchased, maybe 80%, I don't know, I didn't count them. But I got them for $25, so I thought that was pretty good, because I know that these decorative rocks are not cheap. My husband thought it was crazy that we have to pay money for rocks, but that's how it is. But I love the way it looks. I think it fits with the natural look that I'm going for. And yeah, I thought about doing like those pavers that you get from Home Depot or Lowe's, which we've used over on the other side of the house where we have a retaining wall. but I wanted this area to just be a lot more natural. So, and I'm still battling the weeds in here, and I think I'll probably will lay some cardboard down and remulch it. Yeah, so that's how things are looking. So that's how things are going here. I know it's been a while since my last video, but I've been busy and getting things done, and I'm happy to share that with you guys. And there are some decently big changes in the veggie garden, which I mentioned, and we'll cover those next time. Until then, thank you so much for hanging out with me here in the garden. Let me know what you're up to in your garden. I hope that your weather's good wherever you are. And until next time, just keep planting.